My dad's new wife kicked me out of my childhood home, saying, "This is for me and my daughter now. Go find a cheap apartment somewhere." I packed my bags and left without a word. A year later, they called me screaming when they realized I was the one who actually owned the house. I never thought I'd see the day when my own father would turn his back on me for a woman he barely knew. But life has a funny way of knocking you flat when you least expect it. My mom passed away when I was 15. It was sudden, tragic, and completely shattered our family. Dad was never the same after that. I wasn't either. But I tried to be strong, tried to hold things together the best I could. The house we lived in was ours, mine and my mom's. She bought it before she married my dad. She left it to me in her will. Of course, being a minor at the time, my dad was in charge of it until I turned 21. For years, it was just the two of us. We were never particularly close, but we got by. Then, around the time I turned 20, Dad met her. Let's call her Angela. Angela was younger than my dad, not quite a trophy wife, but close. She had a daughter, Haley, who was around 10 at the time. They moved in way too fast, but I didn't say anything. It was my dad's life. He deserved to be happy. Or so I thought. The ultimatum, it started with small things. Angela redecorating, changing furniture, moving things around like she owned the place. Then she started dropping hints. This house is too small for all of us. It would be so nice if Haley had a bigger room. You're an adult now. Don't you think it's time to get your own place? I ignored it. Until one day, Angela didn't hint, she demanded. This is our house now, she said. You need to leave. Go find a cheap apartment somewhere. I left. I actually laughed because it was so ridiculous. That's not happening, I said. This house isn't yours to take. Dad wasn't home at the time, but when he came back, Angela pounced on him like a lion hunting wounded prey. She fed him some nonsense about how I was being difficult and disrespectful, how I was refusing to grow up. Dad sat me down, serious as ever, and said, "It's time for you to be independent, kid. You've been here long enough." I was stunned. "Are you kidding me?" I said. "You know this house is mine, right?" He didn't meet my eyes. He just sighed and said, "Look, I've already talked to a lawyer. You're not 21 yet. Until then, the house is legally under my name. And I've decided you need to move out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own father was kicking me out of my childhood home for a woman he had been with for less than 2 years. And the worst part? There was nothing I could do about it. Packing my bags, I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I packed my bags and left without a word. I crashed at a friend's place for a while and eventually got a tiny apartment of my own. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with thin walls and a weird smell I could never quite get rid of. But it was mine. I worked 2 jobs, barely had time to breathe, but I was free. And I counted down the days until my 21st birthday. Because once that day came, the house would officially be mine. And they would be out. The call a year passed. I turned 21. And just like that, the house was legally mine. I didn't say anything to my dad. I wanted to see how long it would take before he realized his mistake. Turns out, it took 3 months. I was at work when I got the call. It was Angela. She was screaming. "You can't do this to us," she shrieked. "We have nowhere to go." I smirked, even though she couldn't see me. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, pretending to be clueless. "The house. The bank says the house isn't in your father's name anymore. They're telling us we have 30 days to vacate. What the hell is going on?" I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "Oh, that? Yeah, the house was never his to begin with. It was my mom's. She left it to me. It legally became mine when I turned 21. Dead silence. Then, "You little piece of," I hung up. The fallout over the next few weeks, I got flooded with calls from my dad, Angela, and even Haley at one point. They begged, threatened, tried to manipulate me. Dad had the audacity to say, "Come on, kid, you wouldn't put your old man on the street, would you?" I reminded him of what he said to me when he kicked me out. "You're an adult now. Don't you think it's time for you to be independent?" That shut him up. Angela tried to guilt-trip me. "What about Haley? She's just a kid. She doesn't deserve this." I told her I wasn't the one who made her homeless. She did that to herself when she decided to take over a house that was never hers. Dad showed up at my apartment once. Banged on my door for nearly an hour. I didn't open it. Eventually, he left. I don't know where they went after that. I don't care. I moved back into my house a month later. I repainted the walls, replaced the furniture Angela picked out, and made it mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. For a while, life was good. The house was quiet again, peaceful. No more arguments, no more side eyes from Angela, no more fake smiles from my dad pretending everything was okay. Then, one night, I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was almost midnight. I looked through the peephole. It was him. My dad. His face was gaunt, thinner than I remembered. His clothes were wrinkled, like he'd been sleeping in them for days. He looked nothing like the man who had smugly kicked me out a year ago. I didn't open the door. He knocked again, softer this time. Then, he spoke. Son, please. Something in his voice made my stomach twist. He sounded broken. Weak. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to ignore him. But curiosity won. I cracked the door open an inch. What do you want? He swallowed hard. I need to talk to you. I stared at him. You have 10 seconds. He exhaled shakily. Angela's gone. That caught my attention. Gone. She took Haley and left. Took everything. Drained my bank account. Maxed out my credit cards. I have nothing left. His voice cracked. I have nowhere to go. I should have felt bad for him. But I didn't. Not my problem, I said, shutting the door. But before it could close, his hand shot out, stopping it. His eyes were desperate. Please. Just let me stay for a few nights. Just until I get back on my feet. I stared at him. The same man who had kicked me out of my own house, let his wife treat me like garbage, and ignored me for over a year. Now he wanted my help? I wanted to slam the door in his face. But instead, I said, one night. That's it. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because, deep down, no matter how much I hated what he had done, he was still my father. I let him in. The secrets unfold. He looked around, his eyes darting like he expected Angela to pop out of a corner and start yelling. The house was different now at my house. No traces of her. He sat on the couch, rubbing his hands together. He smelled like cheap beer and desperation. What happened? I asked. He let out a bitter laugh. She used me. The whole time. Everything was a lie. I didn't say anything. I just waited. She never loved me, he continued, shaking his head. She just wanted the house. Wanted to secure a future for Haley. The moment she realized she wasn't getting it, she started pulling away. Then one day, I woke up and she was gone. I should have felt smug. Should have laughed in his face. But something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. Because deep down, I had a feeling he wasn't telling me everything. The break-in that night, I locked my bedroom door. I didn't trust him. And it turned out I was right not to. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to a strange noise. A scraping sound, like metal against wood. I held my breath listening. It was coming from the front door. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by my bed and crept toward the hallway. The closer I got, the clearer the sound became. Someone was trying to pick the lock. My heart pounded. I inched toward the peephole. And when I saw who was on the other side, my blood ran cold. Angela. She was hunched over, a screwdriver in her hand, her face twisted in concentration. And right behind her, Haley. They were trying to break in. The confrontation adrenaline took over. I ripped the door open so fast Angela stumbled back with a yelp. What the hell do you think you're doing? I barked. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. Where is he? She hissed. I didn't even have to ask who she meant. My dad, groggy and confused, shuffled into the hallway behind me. The moment he saw her, his face drained of color. Angela took a step forward. You think you can just walk away? She spat. You owe me. He stiffened. I don't owe you anything. Oh, but you do. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only threats. Unless you want me to go to the police. Something in my dad's face changed. Fear. My stomach clenched. What is she talking about? I demanded. Dad stayed silent. Angela's smirk grew. He didn't tell you, she purred. Oh, sweetheart, your dear father has been up to some very bad things. I turned to him. What is she talking about? He still didn't speak. Then Angela pulled something from her purse and threw it at my feet. A bank statement. And that's when I saw it. The debt. My father wasn't just broke, he was drowning. Tens of thousands of dollars in loans, credit cards maxed out, unpaid bills stacked sky high. And worse? Some of them were in my name. The betrayal. My hands shook as I picked up the papers. This isn't mine, I whispered. Angela laughed. Oh, honey. You really thought he kicked you out just because of me? No. He needed you gone so he could start using your identity. I looked at my father, hoping, praying that it wasn't true. But his face told me everything. Regret. Shame. Guilt. He had stolen from me. His own son. And now? Now, Angela had proof. And she was holding it over his head. You ruined my life, I whispered. My throat was tight. My vision blurred. I didn't have a choice, he said, voice hoarse. I was in too deep. I was going to fix it, I swear, bullshit, I snapped. Angela crossed her arms. So here's how this is going to go, she said. Either you let him come with me, or I take these papers to the police. And trust me, they'll be very interested in how your father racked up all this debt. I stared at her, then at him. And in that moment, I realized something. I had a choice to make. A big one. And no matter what I chose, someone was going to pay. The air in the room was thick with tension. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Angela stood there, smug, waiting. My father wouldn't even look at me. I clenched my fists, my mind racing. Angela had the upper hand. If she took those documents to the police, my dad would be in serious trouble. Fraud. Identity theft. He could go to jail. But did I care? After everything he had done? After he stole my name, my money, my future? He deserved whatever was coming. And yet, a part of me hesitated. Because no matter how much I hated him at that moment, no matter how deep his betrayal cut, he was still my father. Angela sighed, tapping her foot impatiently. Clock's ticking, sweetheart. What's it gonna be? I forced myself to breathe. And if I let him go with you? She smirked. Then we forget all about this little mess. We walk away and I don't press charges. I turned to my dad. Is that what you want? His face twisted in shame. I don't have a choice, he murmured. She'll ruin me. I let out a bitter laugh. You already ruined me. I looked at Angela, really looked at her. There was something off. Something wrong. She wasn't just here for revenge. She wanted something more. I needed to stall. Fine, I said. But we talk first. Just me and him. Angela tilted her head. Why? Because if I'm letting him go with you, I at least deserve some answers. She sighed dramatically. Fine. 10 minutes. Then I'm taking him. She turned and walked back toward her car, dragging Haley with her. I shut the door. Then I locked it. The truth comes out. I turned to my dad. Start talking. Now. He swallowed. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Bullshit. He flinched. I threw the bank statement at him. You stole from me. My own father. And now you want me to just let you go with her. Tears welled in his eyes. You don't understand, then make me understand. He rubbed his face, exhaling shakily. Angela, she's dangerous. I frowned. What do you mean? She's not just some woman I met. She planned all of this. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. What are you talking about? He looked up at me, his expression haunted. She knew about your mother's will before I even told her. She knew the house would be yours. That's why she pushed me to kick you out. She wanted you gone so she could claim the house. I shook my head. How would she even know that? His voice dropped to a whisper. Because she used to be my mistress. Betrayal on a whole new level. One felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My father had been cheating on my mother. For years. Angela wasn't just some random woman he met after my mom died. She had been in the picture the whole time. You're lying, I said. He shook his head. I wish I was. I felt sick. I wanted to punch him. To scream at him. But I forced myself to stay calm. So what? She played the long game? Got you to throw me out, thinking she'd get the house? He nodded. But when she found out it was legally yours, she lost it. That's when things changed. Changed how? He hesitated. Then, in a barely audible whisper, he said, I think she wants me dead. The real reason she came back. My blood ran cold. I stared at him, searching for any sign that he was messing with me. But he looked terrified. Why would she want you dead? Because I know too much. I know things about her past that could ruin her. I felt the walls closing in. This was no longer just about me getting kicked out. No longer just about fraud. This was something bigger. Angela wasn't just a gold digger. She was dangerous. And she was waiting outside my house. A new plan. I needed to think fast. Angela had leverage over my dad, but now I had leverage over her. I pulled out my phone. Give me something. Something I can use against her. He hesitated. Then, he whispered, she was married before. Twice. Both husbands died under suspicious circumstances. I froze. Did she kill them? I don't know, he admitted. But there were rumors. People said she manipulated them. Bled them dry financially. And then, they had accidents. My stomach turned. I had let this woman into my house. I had lived with her. And now she was back. I need proof, I said. He nodded quickly. There's a safe. At her old place. It has documents. A journal. Evidence. I never read it, but I know it's there. I glanced at the clock. Time was running out. Angela wouldn't wait much longer. I had to act. And I had to be smart about it. Because this wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about survival. The breaking point. I had two choices. I could let my father leave with Angela, knowing she would use him, manipulate him, maybe even destroy him. Or, I could fight back. Not for him. Not because he deserved my help. But because I wasn't going to let her win. Angela was outside, waiting. Holding power over us both. But she had made a mistake. She thought I was weak. She thought I'd roll over and let her control the situation. She was wrong. I turned to my dad. You said there's a safe at her old place? He nodded. Then we need to get to it before she does. His eyes widened. You're serious? I grabbed my keys. Dead serious. The race against Angela. We took my car. My hands were gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My father sat beside me, jittery, wringing his hands. Angela's old house was across town, a place she rented before she moved in with us. We didn't know if she still had access, but we had to try. I checked the rearview mirror constantly, half expecting her car to appear behind us. By the time we pulled up to the house, my nerves were shot. It was dark, empty. I killed the engine. Do you know if she ever changed the locks? Dad bit his lip. I don't think so. I stared at him. You don't think? I never saw a locksmith come, okay? Great. I got out of the car, creeping toward the back. Dad followed, whispering anxiously. What's the plan if she shows up? She won't, I said, hoping I was right. Dad fumbled with the key. It didn't work. Try another one, I hissed. He pulled out another, and this time click. We were in. The house smelled stale, like no one had lived there in months. But the safe was still there, just as my dad had said, in the back of the bedroom closet. He knelt in front of it, hands shaking. I don't remember the combination. I wanted to scream. Move, I said, yanking him aside. I grabbed the small crowbar I kept in my trunk and jammed it into the edge of the safe door. That's not gonna work, Dad muttered. It will, I gritted out. If I try hard enough. The metal groaned, resisting. But then a pop. The door snapped open. And inside was everything. The evidence that changed everything: papers, photos, a journal. Angela's handwriting filled the pages, neat but frantic. I skimmed, flipping through old entries. He thinks I love him. It's laughable. This house will be mine soon. He's too stupid to stop me. Haley is my only priority. I don't care what happens to him. And then, a picture. A man. Not my father. Someone else. Dad's breath hitched when he saw it. Oh my God. That's Mark. Her second husband. My stomach turned. Angela had done this before. Used a man. Manipulated him. Ruined him. And now? She had been trying to do the same thing to my dad. I grabbed my phone and snapped pictures of everything. Proof. Hard evidence. Then I heard the sound that made my blood run cold. A car pulling up outside. The final confrontation. I didn't have to look. I knew who it was. Angela. I shoved the journal into my jacket and motioned to my dad. We need to go. Now. We sprinted to the front door, but before we could reach it, Angela was there. She stepped inside, blocking our path, a gun in her hand. You shouldn't have come here, she said, voice eerily calm. Dad froze. Angela, let's talk. Shut up, she snapped, raising the gun slightly. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I forced myself to stay calm. You don't want to do this, I said. Her eyes flicked to me. Oh, I do. You ruined everything. I carefully reached into my jacket, pulling out my phone. I held it up. I have it all. Every word you wrote. Every lie. Every manipulation. And if anything happens to me, this goes to the police. Her face twisted. Give it to me, she hissed. No. Her hand shook. The gun wasn't steady. She wasn't ready for this. You don't have the nerve, I said. You never do your own dirty work. You use people, destroy them, and then walk away like it never happened. But this time, you got caught. Her face darkened. You think you've won? I didn't answer. Because in the distance, I heard sirens. Angela panicked. She turned, about to bolt, but Dad lunged. He grabbed her arm, knocking the gun away. It clattered to the ground, and I kicked it aside. She screamed, thrashing against him, but the sound of sirens was getting closer. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Seconds later, police officers burst through the door. Angela didn't stand a chance. She was handcuffed, kicking, screaming, throwing every curse in the book. But it was over. Dad and I stood there, breathing hard, watching as she was dragged away. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt free. The fallout: Angela was charged with multiple counts of fraud, extortion, and, thanks to the documents in the safe, suspicion of involvement in her second husband's death. Dad wasn't completely innocent. The identity theft under my name? He had to pay for that. He avoided jail time, but was slapped with massive fines and restitution orders. I didn't forgive him, but I let him go. I told him I never wanted to see him again. And for once, he actually listened. I went back home. My home. For the first time, it truly felt like mine. I repainted the walls, replaced the locks, cleared out every last memory of them. And as I stood in the quiet of my childhood house, I realized something. Family isn't about blood. It's about who chooses to stand by you. And sometimes, the only person you can count on is yourself.